Hey, it's Anna. Welcome back to my channel. And today I feel like I have enough book club books between my virtual book club and my in-person book club to now rank a good amount of book club books, whether I would suggest them for a book club or not, what my ratings were. I feel like it'd be great to go over this. I have 11 books to rank, which I just feel like is my usual number for rankings. I like being close to that 10. So our virtual book club has been going on for almost a full year now, and it's been really fun to connect with people from all over the US. I am currently reading our book club book now. I won't be able to finish it by the time that I have to record this video, just because I know I have a lot coming up where I need to film this video a little bit earlier than usual. Plus, I did just get my hair done today, and I don't usually do too much with my hair in videos, so I thought it'd be a nice little change. And my in-person book club, there are 2 of us. We are on our 3rd book, but I already finished the 3rd book of our book club, so we'll have a good variety of books to talk about. I'm gonna go from worst to best, because I want to end the video on a good note. So the worst book, which our book club collectively, virtually, hated, and we use it as our metric for literally other books, is The Night Ship. I felt so validated when I was not the only one that did not like this book. So in The Night Ship, you have 2 timelines, this little girl who's on a ship, and then this boy who lives on an island by where the shipwreck happened, because they're 200 years apart, and you follow their stories. That does not sound like a good description. The description for this book literally sounds better, I think, than the book actually itself. I don't really get magical vibes. I don't get a good time from this at all. It was so slow. You don't connect the 2 stories, and I don't know what else to really say besides none of us liked it. And if you've seen, I feel like really any of my videos, I'm not the biggest character-driven story person. So really reading through this and trudging through this was very, very hard, and I was like, maybe it's really just my preferences, maybe I just really don't like it. So it was really validating to be able to talk to other people and see oh, it wasn't just you. And we've had some character-driven stories since that I have liked a lot better. So I also know it's not just me. But this does get some raving reviews. The reason that our book club picked this book is because my friend bought it for $2 at Goodwill, and it had sprayed edges, and she's like, oh, let me just throw it on our book club random wheel suggester, and it was picked, and now we all don't like it. I always try to match my tabs to the cover. This was before I bought official tabs from Amazon, so they're post-it notes that I hand did. So I did read the whole thing. I tabbed the whole thing. I still didn't like it. Would I recommend this for your book club? Honestly, if you really want to hate read something maybe, but even beyond that, no. I really don't know who this book is for. There was no savior of this book at all. I personally would not recommend it. My second lowest rated book is one from our physical book club. So the physical book club I'm in is me and just my friend. We meet and we agree on what books to read. I really wanted to let her lead it because I didn't know if any other of her friends were joining, and they weren't. This was just, she said she Googled books for book clubs, and this was one of the books that came up, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna do something different the next month after reading this. That book is The Berry Pickers. Again, fully tabbed. The reason I like this a little bit more than The Night Ship is because at least the storylines come together. So you have 2 storylines. You have Joe, who grows up with a ton of trauma, and the real start of his trauma is when his sister goes missing, and he was the last one to see his sister. You follow a second perspective of a girl that grows up in Maine and doesn't always feel like she fits in, and she discovers some interesting secrets about her family. So it's those 2 lives that come together. I feel like if I say any more, I'm going to give away the entirety of this plot, and that's one of my big problems. You can read the prologue and you know exactly what's going to happen. I feel like nothing was really added throughout this book, except again, the timelines do overlap. So that was a positive, but even in the chapters, the timelines jump around. I didn't really get some of these things, and luckily my in-person friend and I both agreed upon that. So I will say that she is a little bit younger than I am. So could this be good for an older book club? Potentially, maybe you would have more appreciation. I don't have that sense of appreciation yet. I know that I think Joe, when he's recollecting on all of this, is in his 50s or 60s. So maybe when I'm 50 or 60, I'll have more of an appreciation for this book. I just don't have it right now, but I also don't think it was as bad as The Night Ship. That's literally the metric, and I hope I never read a book as bad as The Night Ship again, but this was also just not very good in my opinion. However, if you have an older book club, it might work out for you. I feel like my friend and I still had good conversations around some of the things that happened happened in the book. The third book on my ranking list, so the third lowest ranked one, is going to be a book that the dual perspectives actually saved the ranking a little bit on this one. I still don't get it. I'm still confused by it to this day, and that would be Our Wives Under the Sea. My last tab that I have in this book says, quote, "Am I stupid? It ends here, question mark." So you can tell my feelings. This is more character driven. You have Leah and Miri. Miri's perspective, abysmal. Does not make sense. Do not recommend. Leah's perspective, I think, is actually fairly interesting and definitely gave me more of the horror vibes. So Leah, since I like her perspective better, we'll start there, goes on an expedition that they think is only going to be 3 weeks, and they end up being stuck for 6 months. So you get Leah's short perspective of what happened over those 6 months. And I was reading this on a plane coming back at night somewhere, and my brain said, you know what would be really good after you read that chapter about Leah in the submarine being trapped? Opening your plane window and seeing the darkness of the sky. What's wrong with me? Anyway, with Leah's perspective, like I said, that was the part that I liked, and that's what puts it above the Berry Pickers for me, is because I really didn't like either of the perspectives in the Berry Pickers. So Leah's perspective, I feel like, saved this book for me. I believe I rated it like a 2 out of 5 then. So I feel like overall, like, could have been clearly worse. But Miri sucked. So we follow Miri. Her perspective is once Leah gets back after missing for 6 months. And so it's all about Miri having to adjust to Leah. And I just think Miri sucks. I feel like she is not really nice to her wife. I feel like it's all about Miri wanting the old Leah back. I'm sorry, how can you expect the old person to come back after they were trapped in a submarine for 6 months? Absolutely not. I feel like there'd be a lot of work that would need to be done. So it just didn't feel as realistic, and there was like some weird stuff with like salt. Again, that was not horror in my opinion. I feel like a lot of the horror was in Leah's chapters, but it was just weird. So, I mean, for this one, I feel like you could read it as a book club, trying to figure out the meanings of this book. I feel like that is something that makes this a could be worse book club book. I don't know how to explain it. I feel like we still had conversations just around our confusion of trying to like decode the book and understand what happens, because you don't really get answers. So if you want to, you know, have those conversations with your book club, and if you like kind of open-ended trying to figure things out in a book yourself, then you might like this better. For me personally, I would not want to read it again, but I don't think it's the worst, obviously, book club book out there. It just all depends on what your book club is looking for. It also was pretty short, so it was a quicker read, but also just Miri was so unbearable. I had such a terrible time with it. But again, people still rave about this book, so maybe I'm wrong, but our book club collectively was confused. So I'm also glad, once again, that it was not just me. And I have better tabs this time, as you can see. So we're starting to get into the realm now, after those 3 lower books, into the realm of like, okay, like, kind of books for a book club. And I feel like this book really teeters on the edge of being like a bad book club book and an okay book club book. And that was Mistakes Were Made. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is a book where you have a senior in college. She hooks up with an older woman. That older woman happens to be her best friend's mom. And it's all about what happens with their relationship there. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of depth, is what our book club kind of decided on. And that it was just kind of like an unrealistic plot, just getting to know the characters. Cassie is the college senior, Erin is the mom, and just it just was a little bit odd. This was also our first spicy book as a book club, and I feel like that's something where, again, can your book club handle spicier books? Can it not? We just felt like some of the spicier scenes were more cringy, and again, I didn't think this was like the worst book, obviously, that we had read, but I also didn't think it was like the best book either, and this was one where talking to the book club, it actually decreased my rating the more that we talked about it, because they brought to my attention, you know, how some of the things I thought were just cringy were actually more potentially harmful, because you are dealing with, you know, people on the LGBTQIA spectrum, and there were just some things that I know went over my head. There are quite a few folks in our book club that have different sexuality, so it was refreshing to hear that conversation and help me learn more about like what's appropriate, what's not, what seems mature, what's not. So that really helped having that conversation. But I think just based off the book club conversations, like I wouldn't recommend this. I think there are other sapphic books out there that your book club could read that would be better. I also think there are other spicier books your book club club could read that would be better. So I feel like I wouldn't recommend this to your book club. I definitely think there are others out there that would do better than this. All right, now I officially feel like every other book I could recommend to a book club with certain caveats. So the first book that kind of falls into that category is The Immortalist. I was actually very hooked on this book for, I would say, a good half, maybe 2/3 of it. So you have 4 siblings. They are part of the Gold family. Gold is their last name. They go and see this like mythical psychic, and they find out the day they're going to die, and you follow each child up until the day that they die. And it's very historical, so I really enjoyed that, especially the earlier 2 children's perspectives you get are very much historical based. It starts to go off the rails with the 3rd and 4th child, in my opinion. And I think this is our most like midly rated book club book. Like I really think it's a 3 overall. Obviously, it's clearly more character driven. This is a case where, yes, you already know the children are gonna die, but you are sticking with their journey to see what happens. Can they actually go against the days that they're going to die? How are they going to die? Like there's still enough unanswered questions where I think it makes the book interesting. And I feel like we had a lot of good conversations around the first 2 children's perspectives. It just goes so off the rails by children 3 and 4 that I feel like that's where it kind of lost us as a book club. So I feel like if your book club really likes character-driven stories, you would really like this. If your book club needs a plot to sink its teeth into, this would not be the book for your book club. You can tell this was also one of our earlier books because my tabs are post-it notes I cut up again, but I really wanted to try to match the covers of the books that I'm reading, so that's part of the reason. So I feel like it just depends on whether your book club is more character-driven based or more plot-driven based. And this is one where it's very solely character-driven. So just definitely keep that in mind. Otherwise, I don't think, obviously, it's the worst book club book out there. I feel like you're about to sense a pattern in terms of the books that I say are like okay for book club, because we have another character-driven story. I felt more personally connected to this character-driven story, which is why it's a little bit higher than The Immortalist, but honestly not by much. And that's Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club. So I'm from the Midwest. Supper clubs are a big thing in the Midwest. I've been to a few myself. And so this follows the story. You have 3 perspectives. You have Muriel and Ned, who you follow them from childhood to adulthood surrounding this supper club. But a 3rd perspective you also get is from Muriel's mother, whose name is Florence. And there is like very minimal plot in this. I don't even want to tell you the plot points because I feel like it gets resolved so fast. I would say you're really following the lives of Florence, Muriel, and Ned. And you have those 3 perspectives that you see these people go through. The only thing I feel like is that this book is heavy, and our book club is in like later 20s for age. And so sometimes I think the heavier topics are just like a little too real. Like for example, we had 2 people in the book club who were pregnant during this book, which was definitely interesting once reading the book because pregnancy is something that's talked about quite a bit in this book. So it was just a little too real for us. Again, I feel like if I read this a little bit older, I would have more of an appreciation for it. I feel like if your book club is between, again, like the 30s and 40s, and essentially if your children are born, I feel like this would just be like a better book club book. I feel like when you're trying to conceive or you are pregnant, this might just be a tougher book to read through, in my opinion. But following Ned, Muriel, and Florence's stories, I still thought were very interesting, seeing all their perspectives. I was more in tune with their perspectives than I feel like the previous character-driven stories, which is why I feel like it's ranked higher. The more that I can relate to the characters and the more that I can get into the character-driven bits, I feel like I'm more likely to rate it higher. So I feel like, again, if your book club's a little bit older, it could be a good fit. If your book club is under 30, I would maybe tread cautiously with this one. Again, I feel like it covers some heavy topics that if your kids aren't born or you're trying to conceive, it could just be a little bit harder to read. So definitely keep that in mind. Maybe look up the trigger warnings before deciding it as a group if you want to go down the path of reading this book. So this is my 6th highest rated book club book for the next pick. I just realized I had 12 books, so my bad. This is one where I think I liked it more than most people in the book club. So I think this will be interesting to see how other people feel about it. We have A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tara Maffei. She wrote the Shatter Me series, which I feel like is what she's most known for. This is a standalone YA book. Nothing spicy in this book. You are following Shirin, who is going through high school, and she doesn't usually get to know anybody. It is 2002. She is Muslim. She wears a hijab, and so she really tries to just like keep her head down and go throughout her day without really interacting with anybody. But of course, there is one boy in her class that really notices her, and they start to develop a type of relationship, and so it's all about the trials and tribulations. There's a big subplot in this book about breakdancing, which was a point of contention. Some people did not like the breakdancing subplot. I didn't mind the breakdancing subplot, especially because Taramati herself breakdanced. Like, you can see videos on it for YouTube. So I like that part, but the book club wasn't as sold on that subplot line. And obviously because it's YA, I feel like YA books, the depth can be hit or miss. And I feel like the depth in this book was a miss for some people. So there were definitely still critiques, but I feel like this led to a lot of good conversations, especially around what's happening today in our society. I feel like a lot of the messages in this book still ring true. So I would say in general, I feel like this is a really good book club book because you can have good conversations around it. I obviously liked it a bit more. Other people did not like it as much. So that's why I feel like this is a little bit lower on my book club book list, because there wasn't a clear consensus of like, yes, everybody in my book club loved this. I definitely liked this more than the book club did. So I feel like putting it 6th makes the most sense. 5th on my list of book club books was actually our very first book club books for the virtual book club, which is In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. You are following Izzy and Nate. They meet on a plane and the plane crashes in 90 seconds. That's in the description. That's literally not a spoiler. And it's all about Izzy and Nate's relationship over the years after sharing that very traumatic incident with each other. This is a little bit spicier. I would definitely say this is an adult book club book. I would also say that if you have folks that have served in the military, I know that we had a military spouse at the time in this book club talking about this, and I think she said that the representation was pretty good. So I feel like that's something where if you're looking for specific military related romances, this is a decent fit. I also feel like I liked the faster pace of it. I personally don't mind Rebecca Yarros' writing in this romance sense. I feel like that's where her writing style fits best. So we did enjoy this. I think this was rated around 4 stars by most of the book club, which I feel like is pretty good, especially to start the book club with. So if you don't mind having a little bit of spice, and if you are looking for like military romances, I feel like this is going to be the perfect fit for your book club. If your book club is okay with spice, but you're not sure about the military part, I would still maybe give this a try, and then you all can have different discussions around the military parts of this, because again, the point of book club is to have good discussions around books, in my opinion. You know, why have a book club if you're not going to discuss the book? So I feel like this can lead to a lot of interesting discussions, so I definitely would recommend it. And as you can see, our book club goes all over the place with like genres and age groups, so going definitely to a more adult book I feel like was interesting in terms of having just talked about a YA book that the next book is an adult. It really shows you how all over all of our reading tastes can be. The next book, which is 4th on my book club recommendations list, is actually a book that I had selected, which makes me feel very good about myself. I am very scared about recommending a book that is not good, but do I read the descriptions before I put the books on the list? Absolutely not, I don't. So I was really not sure about this one, but I liked this one slightly more than In the Likely Event, I think mainly because of genre, and that would be this fantasy standalone of Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove. And my biggest thing is with standalones for fantasy, I just feel like there's never enough, and I think that was the collective with the book club as well. This is a fantasy that's set, I guess, more in a Southeast Asian type of setting. I feel like it's pretty based in like the Indian subcontinent, but it's not a Western fantasy, which I feel like was refreshing to see. You follow Katyana, who is this like exceptional guard that was taken in by the royal family, but once turmoil hits the royal family, Katyana's position is really put at risk, and it's really figuring out how good of a warrior she can be. What could her life have been like if she wasn't this great warrior? Why is so much turmoil happening in this land? Who's gonna come out at the top of power? You have a lot of those typical fantasy tropes in this book. The one thing I will say with this book is that if your book club listens a lot on audiobooks, this might not be the best fit. There is a whole glossary section at the back of the physical book that I feel like when I put it in the GroupMe, a lot of people were very grateful to have a glossary. It goes on for a few pages, but they were really grateful to have a glossary because I think there was some confusion on some of the words in this fantasy book, and so being able to have a glossary is really helpful. But if you go in not knowing the glossary, I can see how this book would be quite a bit more confusing. I still thought it was very fast-paced, action-packed. You could sink your teeth into that plot of, you know, who's gonna rule the empire and the battles that happen in this. So I overall really liked it. Again, I still had unanswered questions at the end, so it wasn't necessarily like the perfect book for me. But if your book club is looking for a fantasy standalone, I do think this is a great one. And again, one that isn't just your standard Western-based type of fantasy, which I feel like just expands everybody's reading views. So I know I picked this one for book club. It wasn't my top book, but that's okay. I'm still really proud of like how highly highly it is ranked, obviously in my own opinion. So maybe I'm a little biased, but what can I say? The third book club book was the second physical book club book, and it was one that I picked. That is The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. Now, if you do not like reality TV, or people in your book club do not like reality TV, skip this. Don't pick it up. I'm sorry, you need to like reality TV, I feel like, to really get into Christina Lauren's writing as a duo. I feel like reality TV is a big basis for them. I don't know if they've ever said that publicly, but that's just my vibes, so keep that in mind. The Paradise Problem is also spicier. So if your book club is okay with reality TV but not okay with spice, skip this one too. We are following Anna and Liam, who got married to get cheaper student housing, and then Anna thought they got divorced. Turns out they didn't. Liam needs to be married to Anna for 5 years to get his inheritance. So now Liam has to convince Anna, whose life completely changed since he knew her, to come with him to his sister's wedding and convince everybody that they are married. Very reality TV, like very over the top. The reason that this is not a top book club is because some of the language was overly cringy, even beyond reality TV cringy, but I really couldn't put this book down, and that's where with Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove, I could put it down and take little breaks in between. I didn't want to put this book down. I wanted to read it to the end to figure out what happened. So these top 3 books, starting with this one and third, were book club books that I could not put down and just needed to read and get answers on. So again, pretty good for myself, patting myself on the back in terms of picking book club books, but this was also one that was one of my most anticipated releases. So I feel like I'm definitely cheating there. The second highest rated book club book is also a fantasy standalone. It is The Hanging City. Oh my goodness. This is one where I went in not knowing the description and I didn't want to put it down. I think the world building in this book is masterful. I feel like the trials and tribulations our main character goes through just sucks you right in. There was so much that we talked about as a book club because your main mythical creature in this fantasy standalone is trolls. And I feel like that's not always a creature that gets highlighted in fantasy standalone. So I feel like that was very interesting to see how our main character, who is human, interacts with these trolls. So our main character name is Lark. She is escaping her father. She's been looking for this city ever since she heard it as a little girl, and she finds the city of these people with trolls, but Lark has to convince the trolls to let her in. And how does Lark do that? Well, Lark can basically make other people so scared with her like fear-based power that they are literally paralyzed and can't do anything. So she is extremely powerful. The trolls let her in, but they don't let every single troll know how powerful she is. So you follow Lark as she's in this city, as she's given a job to protect the city from monsters, and as she continues to develop her power and build relationships. Don't forget about her dad, though, that she's escaping her dad, because that does come back in this fantasy standalone. Our biggest complaint as a book club, literally, is how there was not more. How there was not a sequel to this. The ending is very open-ended. So if your book club does not like open-ended books, if they like everything wrapped up with a bow, probably not the best book to choose. But if you're okay with more of an open ending, you still get a decent bit of resolution in this book, but it's not like a closed case book of, yep, we have every single answer, we know exactly what happened. No, you don't really get that here. So that's why this is my second rated book, because to me, it wasn't exactly like a perfect book. But if you're looking for a fantasy standalone, there is like the smallest amount of like some type of spice. It fades to black. So I feel like all ages can really read this. I don't really feel like you're uncomfortable, but don't forget there are trolls involved. And so I feel like that's just an interesting aspect to a book club book. I also really like the writing style of this. I know I want to read more books by Charlie at some point. So I would definitely recommend this for the majority of book clubs that like the fantasy genre. Obviously, if your book club doesn't like fantasy, probably not the best pick. And then finally, my top rated book club book. And honestly, the inspiration behind this entire video was because I just wanted a place to talk about this book. And I don't think I've done like a full 10-minute review. So I at least wanted to give you some other book club book suggestions before my top suggestion. I'm going to say it's a romance. It is spicier. So your book club has to be, in my opinion, should be adults that can handle spicier books. But if your book club can check those 2 boxes, I would highly recommend you pick this up. And that's Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I think the other person in my physical book club doesn't even have the book yet. I devoured this. I literally thought about this while I was at computer at work, and I could not stop thinking about it. I pushed off so many things I should have done just to read this book. And I think you can almost tell how fully into it I was by like almost the lack of tabs near the end because I was just so focused on wanting to get it done. Like I should go back and reread some of the passages just to tab it more, to have more conversation. You are following Emma in this book, who is a travel nurse. She sees a Reddit thread of a man who says, oh, after every girlfriend that breaks up with with me, they go and find their soulmate. Emma believes she has the same thing where after every boyfriend has like broken up with her, they've gone and find their soulmate. So Emma connects with the Reddit thread poster whose name is Justin. And Emma and Justin then start a texting conversation type relationship. And she actually convinces her best friend Maddie to have their next travel nursing assignment be in Minnesota where Justin is, so that they're able to meet in person and see if they can actually break this curse and then be able to meet their soulmates. So obviously it's a little bit of an exceptional romance story, right? You have depth in this book with Justin's family backstory and Emma's family backstory. So there's more than just the romance to hold on to. There are spicier scenes. I feel like Abby Jimenez's voice just does like a great job describing the romance, describing the trials and tribulations. So if you can get past the little bit of a wonky type of scenario of how they meet, I feel like this is a great book to have discussions on about like the family problems that are going on in this book, how their romance develops. I feel like there's so much that you can dig your teeth into here because you have a plot, you know, that you get from the description, but you also have the characters that are growing in this book. Because it's a romance, you know how romances end, but I feel like the journey to get there was just so enjoyable. I feel like I can't recommend this enough to people. I feel like I have not always been a fan of Abby Jimenez, but this really just like turned me onto her books, and I definitely need to look for more because I absolutely loved this. So my official ranking from worst to best is The Night Ship, Berry Pickers, Our Wives Under the Sea, Mistakes Were Made, The Immortalist, Saturday Night at the Lakeside Supper Club, A Very Large Expanse of Sea, In the Likely Event, Night of the Raven, Dawn of the Dove, The Paradise Problem, The Hanging City, and then Just for the Summer. I'm definitely curious, are you in a book club? What books have you read? Have you read any of these? I'm super curious to see what other people's thoughts are, because maybe your book club read Just for the Summer and hated it. Maybe they read The Night Ship and they loved it. I would definitely be curious if your book club read The Night Ship and loved it. I need you to like have a conversation with me and try to get me to understand the book, I guess. So overall, I hope this inspires you a little bit. You can always have a book club, even if it's just with one other person. I feel like as long as you're talking about books with somebody, it's considered a book club. So if you don't have a book club, I would highly recommend starting one if you love to talk about books. If you have any questions about our virtual book club, you can let me know. I can provide information on that and joining. We're super flexible with our book club and what books we pick. So hopefully this was really interesting. I have a lot of author event videos coming up. I'm very excited for it. I'm also traveling quite a bit, so we're gonna see what videos kind of pop up on the channel over this month, but still proud of my consistency. If you ever want to see anything specific in a video, definitely let me know. And I hope you keep reading, and I'll see you guys later.